How do you know when someone has lost interest in you? It's never loud, it's never obvious, it's never a dramatic goodbye. Instead, it's subtle, like a fading song, like a candle burning out slowly. At first, you don't even realize it's happening. The conversations still exist, but they lack warmth. The responses come, but they feel hollow. The energy that once filled the space between you two is no longer there. She feels it before she can explain it. Women have a sixth sense for these things. The moment your energy shifts, even just a little, she knows. She can sense it in the delay of your replies, in the absence of excitement in your voice. She can feel it in the way you used to lean in, but now lean away. In the way your presence used to feel like gravity, pulling her in, but now it feels distant, unreachable. At first, she tells herself it's nothing. Maybe he's just busy. Maybe he's tired. Maybe I'm overthinking. She reassures herself with the same excuses we all make when we don't want to face reality. Because facing reality means acknowledging that something is changing. And change, especially when it's unexpected, feels like a storm you weren't ready for. But deep inside, the feeling lingers. It's not about words. It's about absence. The absence of effort, the absence of excitement, the absence of you. And that absence, it creates questions. Did I do something wrong? Was I not enough? What changed? She replays moments in her mind, searching for clues, for signs she might have missed. She scrolls through old messages, looking for the turning point, the moment when things started to feel different. She tries to convince herself that nothing has changed, but the heart knows what the mind tries to deny. And then something deeper starts to happen. Doubt creeps in, not just doubt about you, but doubt about herself. Because when someone we care about pulls away, we don't just question them, we question ourselves. And that's where the real pain begins. But here's the part most people never realize. When a woman senses that you've lost interest, she doesn't just react emotionally, she reacts psychologically. Her mind shifts into problem-solving mode. She wants to understand why. She wants to fix it. She wants to reverse it. And that's exactly what keeps her hooked. Because uncertainty is one of the most powerful psychological triggers. When something is clear, when rejection is obvious, it's painful, but at least it's understood. But when something is unclear, when interest fades without explanation, when silence replaces effort, the mind becomes obsessed with figuring it out. That's why she doesn't let go immediately. That's why she keeps looking for answers. Because human nature refuses to accept uncertainty. And this is where the story begins. Because what happens next, her reaction, her emotions, the way she chooses to handle this moment, tells you everything you need to know. And if you understand this, if you truly see what's happening beneath the surface, you'll realize something powerful. The way she reacts isn't just about you, it's about who she really is. The doubt creeps in. Uncertainty is a slow poison. It doesn't strike all at once. It seeps in, little by little, until it's everywhere. At first, she ignores it. She tells herself she's overthinking. But the silence grows louder. The missing energy becomes impossible to ignore. And then doubt creeps in. It starts small, just a thought, a whisper in the back of her mind. Maybe he's just stressed. Maybe he's distracted. But doubt doesn't stay small. It feeds on every unanswered question, every delayed reply, every shift in your tone. And before she knows it, it's all she can think about. She starts replaying moments in her mind, like a detective searching for evidence. When did things start to change? Was it something I said? Something I did? She scrolls through old conversations looking for clues. She studies your words, your actions, the way you used to make her feel, trying to find the exact moment when she stopped being a priority. Because the hardest part isn't losing someone's attention. The hardest part is not knowing why. And that's when insecurity begins to take hold. It's human nature. When someone pulls away, we don't just feel their absence, we question our own worth. We wonder if we weren't good enough, if we made a mistake, if we could have done something differently. And here's the dangerous part. The mind doesn't just sit with questions. It demands answers. It starts creating stories, filling in the blanks with worst-case scenarios. Maybe he found someone else. Maybe I was never that important to him. Maybe I was just an option and now he's made his choice. She knows she shouldn't think this way. She knows she should stay calm, let things be, but emotions don't follow logic. And the more she tries to fight it, the more it consumes her. That's when the real battle begins. Not with you, but within herself. Because when a woman starts doubting her own worth, she does one of two things. She either clings harder, trying to prove she's worth your attention, chasing the validation she feels slipping away, or she starts shutting down, building walls to protect herself from the rejection she fears is coming. Either way, the shift has already happened. She's no longer just reacting to you, she's reacting to her own mind, her own fears, her own need for reassurance. And here's where it gets interesting. The more she tries to figure you out, the more power shifts in your hands. Because now you're no longer just someone she liked, you're a mystery she needs to solve. And mystery is addictive. It's why people chase what they don't fully understand. It's why the hardest thing to forget isn't love, it's confusion. But there's something even more powerful than confusion. And that's the moment she realizes she's losing herself in the process. Because once she sees it, once she recognizes that she's spending more time analyzing your actions than focusing on her own worth, that's when something shifts inside her. And when that shift happens, everything changes. The first reaction, seeking reassurance now. She needs to know. The questions won't let her rest. The doubt won't let her move forward. She has to find out where she stands. So she reaches out. Maybe she texts more than usual just to see how you respond. Maybe she throws in a playful question, something light, something indirect. But the purpose is clear. She wants to test the waters. She wants to see if she's overthinking or if something is really wrong. And the way you respond, that's what determines her next move. Because if you respond coldly, short replies, no enthusiasm, no effort, and the doubt inside her grows stronger. If you delay your responses, taking longer than usual, showing less interest, she feels it. If she used to be the one you couldn't wait to talk to and now she's the one waiting, it stings. But the real pain, it's in the realization that she's now trying to keep your attention. And that's a battle no one wants to fight. Because the moment she feels like she has to convince you to care, the moment she feels like she's chasing someone who isn't meeting her halfway, something inside her starts to change. At first, she fights it. She tells herself she just needs to try harder. She sends another message, tries another call, finds another excuse to reach out. She thinks, if I can just remind him of how we used to be, maybe things will go back to normal. But deep inside, another voice starts whispering, a voice that says, why am I doing this? Why am I giving so much energy to someone who isn't giving it back? And that voice, that's the beginning of the end. Because once she starts questioning the effort she's putting in, once she realizes she's the only one fighting for the connection, that's when the power begins to shift again. That's when the fire that kept her holding on starts to burn out. And that moment is the one you never see coming. The emotional roller coaster, she feels it now. Clear as day, the shift, the imbalance. The effort that once flowed effortlessly between you two now feels one-sided, forced. And nothing makes a person question their worth more than feeling like they have to convince someone to care. So she reacts, not out of logic, but out of emotion, out of frustration, out of the silent storm building inside her. At first, she might try harder. She might reach out more, say things to spark a reaction, try to reignite the energy that once felt so natural. She's looking for reassurance, not just in your words, but in your actions. But if she doesn't get it, that's when the emotional roller coaster begins. One moment, she's convincing herself she doesn't care. Fine. If he's losing interest, I'll just act like I don't notice. But the next, she's fighting the urge to text, to check if you're online, to look for some sign that you still think about her. She might act distant, but inside, her mind is racing. Is this really happening? Was everything we shared just temporary? The pain of indifference is far worse than the pain of an argument, because at least when two people argue, it means they still care. But silence is brutal. Silence makes a person feel invisible. And that's what gets to her the most. Not just the fading interest, but the realization that you don't even notice the storm inside her. And so she swings between anger and sadness, between wanting to hold on and wanting to let go, between thinking she can fix this and realizing that maybe she can't. Maybe she starts acting like she doesn't care. Maybe she posts something meant to get your attention. Maybe she ignores your text for a few hours just to see if you'll notice. It's not to play games, it's to balance the scale because she feels it now. The power has shifted, and no one likes to feel like they're the only one left trying. But deep inside, she knows one thing. She cannot stay in this place forever. At some point, something inside her is going to break. And when that happens, everything will change. The realization hits. There's a moment, always a moment, where everything becomes crystal clear, where she finally sees things for what they are, not what she wants them to be. And that moment, it changes everything. It doesn't happen in an explosion of anger. It doesn't happen in the middle of an argument. It happens in silence, when she's alone with her thoughts, when she finally accepts the truth she's been avoiding. She sits with it, the unanswered texts, the one-word replies, the slow disappearance of the energy you once gave so freely, and she realizes something painful, yet powerful. You weren't too busy. You weren't too distracted. You weren't going through something you couldn't talk about. You just stopped caring the way you used to. And that realization, that's the turning point. Because now it's no longer about you, it's about her. And when a woman reaches this stage, when she stops trying to fix things and starts focusing on herself, she becomes unstoppable. She no longer wants answers. She no longer needs closure. She no longer waits for a message that isn't coming. She accepts reality, and with that acceptance comes something powerful: freedom. And here's where everything shifts again. Because the moment she stops chasing, the moment she stops seeking validation, the moment she reclaims her own energy, that's when you start to feel her absence. That's when you start to wonder why she isn't reaching out anymore. That's when you start to realize what you took for granted. But by the time that happens, she might already be gone. The power shifts, something changes when she stops trying. The energy that once pulled her towards you, she reclaims it. The thoughts that once revolved around you, she redirects them. The emotions that once made her question herself, she now channels them into something greater. Her growth, her confidence, her life. And this is where the real power shift happens. Because when a woman finally realizes her worth, when she steps back and sees the situation for what it is, she stops asking, why isn't he putting in effort? And starts asking, why was I accepting so little? She starts to remember who she was before all of this. The version of herself that didn't settle for inconsistency, that didn't second guess her own value, that didn't shrink herself just to keep someone else interested. And when she remembers, she rises. You feel it before you see it. Her energy is different. She's no longer waiting, no longer hoping, no longer making excuses for your behavior. And here's the irony. The moment she stops caring, that's when you start too. Because now something is missing. The attention she used to give you, gone. The way she used to light up when she saw your name pop up, faded. The effort she used to make, she's now making it for herself. And that absence, it's louder than words. Because when someone pulls away, we don't always notice right away. But when someone stops giving us what we got used to, that's when it hits. And now the roles have reversed. Suddenly, you start thinking about her more than before. You wonder why she hasn't texted. You check her social media, looking for signs. Is she moving on? Is she happy without me? The mind plays tricks on us when we take someone for granted. What once felt secure now feels uncertain. What once felt familiar now feels distant. And uncertainty is what keeps people up at night. Because human nature is predictable. We don't always value something while we have it, but the moment we realize we might lose it, that's when we start to care. And now you are the one left with questions. Did she ever really need me? Or was I just an option? Is she gone for good, or is she just waiting for me to make a move? Did I lose something I'll never get back? And just like that, the game has changed. But here's the thing. She's not playing anymore. She's done with the cycle of uncertainty, done chasing clarity where none exists, done giving her energy to someone who only noticed her value when she stopped proving it. Because now she sees the truth. A man who truly values her would never have put her in this position in the first place. And the moment she realizes that, she lets go completely. And once she lets go, she's never the same again. The turning point, there's a moment in every person's life when they stop looking back, when they stop waiting for an explanation, an apology, or a sign that things will go back to how they used to be. For her, that moment is now. She doesn't need closure anymore because she's given it to herself. She doesn't need to hear your reasons because they don't change the outcome. And she no longer wonders if she was enough, because she finally understands that she was always enough. The problem was never her effort. It was never her care, her kindness, or her willingness to give. The problem was that she was giving to someone who didn't know how to receive, who didn't know how to appreciate, who didn't realize the depth of what he had. And now she does the one thing you never expected. She moves on. Not with words, not with a dramatic goodbye, not with one final attempt to make you see what you lost. She just stops. Stops trying. Stops reaching out. Stops giving energy to something that no longer serves her. And here's what most people don't understand. When a woman truly lets go, she never returns as the same person. She doesn't come back hoping you've changed. She doesn't wait for the day you realize what she meant to you. She doesn't check to see if you finally understand her worth. Because she's not the same woman you once knew. The version of her that doubted herself, gone. The version of her that questioned her worth, replaced. The version of her that needed validation from someone who treated her like an option, she doesn't exist anymore. And that's when it happens. You feel her absence in a way you never imagined. At first, you might not even recognize it. Maybe it's just a passing thought, a brief memory of something she once said. But then it lingers. It grows. You see something that reminds you of her. You hear a song that brings her back. And suddenly you realize she's really gone. Not in a way that means she hates you, not in a way that means she's bitter or resentful, but in a way that means she no longer needs you. And that is the most powerful feeling in the world, because deep down, you know you had something rare, something real, and you let it slip away, and now she's no longer the one wondering, what if? Now that question belongs to you. The regret that comes too late, there's a cruel truth about life. We don't always recognize what matters most until it's no longer within our reach. And now you feel it, the void, the absence. The silence that used to be filled with her presence. She was always there until she wasn't. She once gave you her time, her thoughts, her energy. She once cared enough to check in, to ask how your day was, to listen when no one else did. She once made you feel like you were important, like you mattered. But now, that warmth is gone. She no longer waits for a reply that takes too long. She no longer looks for signs that you still care. She no longer holds on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, you'll see what she saw in you. And now it's you who is left in the space she walked away from. You start to replay the moments you once overlooked. The little things she did that you never fully appreciated. The way she paid attention to details. The way she remembered things about you that you didn't even remember sharing. She was always there. Until she wasn't. And the worst part? She didn't leave in anger. She didn't leave with a dramatic exit or a speech about how you never valued her. She didn't try to make you feel guilty or beg you to change. She just stopped showing up. And now, her absence speaks louder than any words ever could. You tell yourself that you'll reach out, that maybe she's still waiting, but something inside you knows the truth. When a woman moves on mentally, she's already gone physically. She's no longer checking her phone, waiting for your message. She's no longer looking for an explanation or a sign. She's no longer hoping for the version of you that she once believed in. And that's when regret hits the hardest. Because now you're the one wondering what could have been. Now you're the one left with unanswered questions. Now you're the one who has to live with the knowledge that you had something real and you let it go. But the world doesn't stop. She doesn't pause her life waiting for you to figure things out. She doesn't put her happiness on hold while you wrestle with your emotions. She moves forward. And one day, you'll see her again. Not as the woman who once gave you everything, but as the woman who no longer needs anything from you. And that will be the moment you finally understand. Some losses are permanent. The lesson that changes everything. Regret is a painful teacher, but it is also a powerful one. You can sit in the loss, replaying every moment, wishing you had done things differently. You can drown in the what-ifs, letting them consume you. Or you can do something far more difficult, but far more valuable. You can learn. Because regret is only wasted if nothing changes. If the pain of losing her doesn't wake you up, if it doesn't shift your perspective, if it doesn't push you to become better, then it means nothing. But if you choose to listen, if you choose to see the truth that was always in front of you, then this loss is no longer just a mistake. It becomes a lesson that transforms you. And the truth is, it was never just about her. It was about you. It was about your ability to show up, to appreciate, to communicate, to value what you have before it's gone. It was about breaking the cycle of taking things for granted, of assuming that good people will always wait, of thinking that love and effort are endless resources, because they're not. She left, not just because she lost interest, but because she outgrew the version of you that thought she would always be there. And now, the choice is yours. You can stay the same, numb, indifferent, careless with the things that matter, or you can become the person who never makes this mistake again. Not just for her, not just for someone else, but for yourself. Because in the end, this was never just about losing her. This was about finding you. The lesson that changes everything. Regret is a painful teacher, but it is also a powerful one. You can sit in the loss, replaying every moment, wishing you had done things differently. You can drown in the what-ifs, letting them consume you. Or you can do something far more difficult, but far more valuable. You can learn, because regret is only wasted if nothing changes. If the pain of losing her doesn't wake you up, if it doesn't shift your perspective, if it doesn't push you to become better, then it means nothing. But if you choose to listen, if you choose to see the truth that was always in front of you, then this loss is no longer just a mistake. It becomes a lesson that transforms you. And the truth is, it was never just about her. It was about you. It was about your ability to show up, to appreciate, to communicate, to value what you have before it's gone. It was about breaking the cycle of taking things for granted, of assuming that good people will always wait, of thinking that love and effort are endless resources, because they're not. She left, not just because she lost interest, but because she outgrew the version of you that thought she would always be there. And now the choice is yours. You can stay the same, numb, indifferent, careless with the things that matter, or you can become the person who never makes this mistake again. Not just for her, not just for someone else, but for yourself. Because in the end, this was never just about losing her. This was about finding you, becoming the man who never loses again. Pain can break you, or it can build you. Regret can hold you back, or it can push you forward. And right now, you have a choice. You can let this moment define you as the man who didn't appreciate what he had, the man who realized too late, the man who only saw value after it was gone. Or you can become the man who never makes this mistake again. The kind of man who understands that love isn't owed to him, it's earned. That respect isn't demanded, it's cultivated. That trust isn't given freely, it's built over time through consistency, honesty, and presence. The kind of man who doesn't just regret the past, but learns from it. Because this isn't about chasing someone you lost. It's not about proving anything to her. It's about proving something to yourself, that you can evolve, that you can change, that you can become someone who never takes the people he values for granted. So how does that happen? It starts with the way you show up, not just in relationships, but in life. You become intentional. You stop making excuses for your lack of effort. You stop assuming that people will wait while you figure yourself out. You become the kind of man who makes people feel seen, heard, and valued. You communicate, not just when things are easy, but when they're hard. You express gratitude, not just in words, but in actions. You invest, not just in someone else, but in your own growth, in your own ability to be a better person. Because here's the truth. A man who truly values what he has never has to watch it walk away. He doesn't live in regret. He doesn't wonder what could have been. He doesn't lose the ones who matter most because he chooses to show up. And when you become that man, when you commit to never repeating the same mistakes, you don't just win in relationships, you win in life. The mindset that changes everything. Everything you've lost has taught you something. The pain you felt, the regret you've carried, the moments you wish you could take back, it's all been a lesson about value, about presence, about what it truly means to cherish what you have while you have it. Because life doesn't give second chances to those who waste the first. And the ones who do get another opportunity, they only get it because they changed. So ask yourself, have you changed? Have you truly learned? Have you let go of the habits that made you lose what mattered? Have you become the kind of man who deserves the things he once took for granted? Or are you still stuck in the same cycle, only waking up when it's too late? Because here's the truth. The world doesn't pause for you. People move on. Opportunities disappear. Moments fade. And if you're not careful, you'll spend your life watching everything you could have had slip through your fingers. But you don't have to live that way. You don't have to be the man who only realizes after he's lost. You can be the man who sees before it's too late. The man who values before it's gone. The man who chooses to show up fully, intentionally, and without hesitation, not just in love, but in life. Because the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. A man who takes relationships for granted takes life for granted. A man who ignores the people who care about him ignores his own potential. A man who wastes time with half effort wastes every opportunity that comes his way. And that's not who you were meant to be. So don't wait for regret to teach you another lesson. Step up now, show up now, live in a way where you never have to wonder, what if I had tried harder? What if I had given more? What if I had appreciated what I had before it was too late? Because a man who gives his all never has to ask those questions. He already knows the answer. And that answer is, I gave everything. I valued everything. And because of that, I lost nothing. The man who walks away stronger. The past does not define you. Not the mistakes, not the regrets. Not the moments you wish you could rewrite. What defines you is what you do now. Because pain was never meant to break you. It was meant to build you. Every loss you faced, every person who walked away, every moment that made you feel powerless was simply a test of how you respond, a test of whether you let pain turn you into a victim or into a man who never repeats the same mistake again. And the truth is, most people never change. They keep making the same choices, following the same patterns, and wondering why they end up with the same results. They blame others. They drown in self-pity. They wait for life to fix itself. But you are not most people. You are the kind of man who walks away stronger. Stronger in your vision. Stronger in your purpose. Stronger in your ability to recognize what truly matters before it's too late. Because from this moment forward, you will no longer live in hesitation. You will not wait to appreciate someone until they leave. You will not hesitate to express what you feel. You will not take the people who care for you for granted. And if something or someone is no longer meant for you, you won't beg. You won't chase. You won't lower your value trying to prove your worth. Because a man who knows his worth never has to prove it. He simply becomes it. And that kind of man, he never has to fear losing something. Because he gives his all, values what he has, and moves forward without regret. So take this moment and make a decision. Will you stay the same or will you rise? Will you repeat the cycle or will you break it? Will you remain in the past or will you walk forward as the man you were always meant to be? The choice is yours. The man who can't be shaken. The strongest man is not the one who never loses. It's the one who knows he can never truly lose. Because no matter what happens, who stays, who leaves, what changes, he remains unshaken. He doesn't cling to what isn't meant for him. He doesn't beg for what is slipping away. He doesn't waste time dwelling on things he can't control. Why? Because he understands something most people never do. Everything that happens is either a blessing or a lesson, and he refuses to waste either one. If someone leaves his life, he doesn't crumble. He learns. If an opportunity slips away, he doesn't break. He builds. If he faces heartbreak, failure, or disappointment, he doesn't drown in self-pity. He rises in self-mastery. Because at the core of everything, he knows his worth isn't tied to anything outside of him. Not a relationship. Not another person's validation. Not what others think, say, or do. His worth is built from within. Through his discipline, his mindset, his purpose, and his ability to walk away from anything that does not serve his highest self. And that is why he is untouchable. Because when a man stops chasing, stops begging, stops fearing loss, he becomes something far greater than someone trying to hold on to the past. He becomes the kind of man people don't want to lose. He radiates self-respect. He moves with confidence. He leads with strength, not desperation. And that is the man you were meant to be. So from this moment forward, you will no longer operate from fear. You will no longer shrink yourself just to keep someone in your life. You will no longer second guess your worth. You will no longer hesitate when it comes to what you truly want. Instead, you will move with certainty. You will understand that if something is meant for you, it will stay. And if it isn't, you will let it go. Without resistance, without regret, without looking back. Because a man who knows who he is never fears what he might lose. He only focuses on who he is becoming. And that is the kind of man who never truly loses at all. The man who creates his own destiny. There comes a moment in every man's life when he has to decide, will he continue letting life happen to him, or will he take control and shape his own destiny? Because the truth is, most men live in reaction mode. They react to rejection. They react to failure. They react to the way people treat them, never realizing that the world is simply a mirror of how they see themselves. But the man who creates his own destiny does not live this way. He does not sit around wondering if someone will stay or leave. He does not waste time overanalyzing what went wrong. He does not shrink himself, waiting for life to hand him something better. No, he becomes better. He moves forward with an unstoppable mindset. He understands that if he wants something, he must become the man who deserves it. Not by begging, not by chasing, not by hoping someone sees his worth, but by proving it to himself first. Because confidence is not built in words, it is built in action. Discipline, self-respect, a vision so strong that nothing, no person, no failure, no setback can shake him from it. This is the kind of man who attracts rather than pursues. The kind of man who does not wait for the perfect moment, he creates it. The kind of man who does not depend on someone else to complete him, he completes himself. Because he understands the one thing most people never do. He is the architect of his own life. Every decision he makes, every habit he builds, every boundary he sets, they are all bricks in the foundation of his empire. So now you must ask yourself, are you building something strong, or are you letting others dictate the blueprint of your life? Are you leading with power, or are you still waiting for permission to step into your greatness? Because at the end of the day, no one is coming to save you. No one is going to hand you the life you want. No one is going to fix your mistakes for you. No one is responsible for your growth except you. So today, you stop waiting. You stop hoping someone else will recognize your worth. You stop playing small, and you start becoming the kind of man who never has to question his own value. Because that kind of man, he doesn't just accept his fate, he creates it. There is a point where hesitation ends, where doubt fades, where fear no longer controls your next move. This is the moment when a man becomes unstoppable, not because he has all the answers, not because life suddenly became easy, not because he no longer faces setbacks, but because he made a decision to never again betray himself, a decision to never again settle for less than he deserves, a decision to never again let the opinions, actions, or rejections of others dictate his worth. Most men live their entire lives avoiding this moment. They hide behind excuses. They wait for the perfect timing. They let fear whisper in their ear, keeping them small, keeping them weak, keeping them in the same cycle of regret. But the man who becomes unstoppable breaks the cycle. He does not fear the unknown. He embraces it. He does not wait for permission. He takes action. He does not seek validation. He validates himself. And because of this, he cannot be controlled, not by rejection, not by failure, not by what others think he should or shouldn't do, because when you stop needing outside approval, when you stop fearing loss, when you realize that you alone decide your own worth, you become the most dangerous man in the room, the kind of man that opportunities chase, the kind of man that people admire but cannot manipulate, the kind of man that women respect, desire, and never take for granted. Because this kind of man, he walks away from anything that does not align with his purpose. He is not led by desperation. He is not controlled by emotion. He is not waiting for someone else to tell him who he is, because he already knows. And when a man knows who he is, There is no force strong enough to stop him. So now you have a choice. You can keep living like most men, chasing, begging, doubting, waiting, or you can step into your power. You can rise. You can lead. You can become the man you were always meant to be. The man who no longer asks, what if? The man who no longer hesitates. The man who no longer fears loss, because he understands he is the prize. And a man who knows his worth, he is unstoppable. The power of walking away. There is one move that changes everything. One decision that shifts the entire balance of power in your favor. Walking away. Most men never learn this. They stay. They cling. They chase. Not because they don't see the signs, but because they're afraid. Afraid to lose her. Afraid to be alone. Afraid to let go of something that once felt good, even when it's no longer right. But a man who understands his worth, he is not afraid to walk away, because he knows one thing with absolute certainty. His value does not decrease just because someone fails to see it. He does not negotiate for respect. He does not beg for attention. He does not sit around hoping someone will change. He moves on, not as a tactic, not as a game, not to make someone chase him, but because he refuses to stay where he is not valued. And the moment he does this, everything shifts. Because the one who walks away is always the one in control. People feel it when you detach. They sense it when you are no longer emotionally tied to the outcome. And that's when the real power begins. That's when she starts questioning everything. That's when she starts replaying every moment, wondering where she lost you. That's when she realizes you were the prize all along. Because deep down, people don't respect what is always available. They respect what is rare, what is valuable, what is willing to walk away. This is not about playing games. This is about knowing your worth so deeply that you refuse to waste it on the wrong people. Because the right people, they will recognize your value from the start. They will not make you chase. They will not take you for granted. So when someone pulls away, when someone treats you like an option, when someone acts like they can replace you, let them go. Let them see what life feels like without your presence. Let them learn the hard way that you were never the one who needed them. Because when a man has the strength to walk away, he does not lose, he wins. And the man who walks away with his dignity intact, he never has to look back. The man who never looks back, there's a reason why the strongest men never look back. Because looking back means doubt. Looking back means hesitation. Looking back means you're still attached to something that's already behind you. But a man who truly knows his worth, he only moves forward, not because he's heartless, not because he doesn't feel, not because he doesn't remember, but because he understands something most people never will. His future is far more valuable than his past. Most men fail here. They walk away, but they keep checking their phone. They cut ties, but they still stalk her profile. They say they're done, but in the back of their mind, they're hoping for a second chance. That is not walking away. That is not strength. That is fear disguising itself as hope. But the man who never looks back, he is a man of discipline. He is a man of self-control. He is a man who has made peace with what is lost. And because of that, he is unstoppable. Because a man who refuses to dwell on what's behind him is a man who commands the future. He doesn't sit around wondering, what if? He doesn't replay old conversations, searching for mistakes. He doesn't waste energy trying to change something that is already gone. He simply moves forward. And the irony? That's when everything begins to shift in his favor. Because when you stop looking back, you stop carrying the weight of the past. When you stop carrying the weight of the past, you become lighter. And when you become lighter, you move faster towards your goals, faster towards new opportunities, faster towards the life you were meant to live. And that's when they start to notice. Because nothing is more powerful than a man who has truly let go. A man who no longer reacts. A man who no longer waits. A man who no longer entertains anything that does not serve his future. That kind of man, he is rare, he is valuable, and he never has to look back. Because what's ahead of him is far greater than anything he left behind. The unshakable man. There comes a point in a man's life when he stops seeking validation. Not because he doesn't care, not because he's arrogant, but because he has built something far greater than approval, an unshakable foundation, a foundation built on self-respect, a foundation built on discipline, a foundation built on the unbreakable truth that his value is not determined by anyone else. Most men never reach this point. They live in a cycle of chasing love, chasing attention, chasing people who never deserved them in the first place. And every time they chase, they lose power. Every time they seek approval, they surrender control. Every time they beg to be chosen, they forget they are the ones who should be doing the choosing. But the man who understands his worth, he does not chase. He does not explain himself. He does not argue for his value. He simply exists in a way that makes it undeniable. And the moment he does this, everything changes. Because people can feel it when a man no longer needs their validation. They can sense it when he is completely at peace with himself. That kind of energy is rare. That kind of energy is attractive. That kind of energy makes people want to earn a place in his life. This is the man who sets the tone in every interaction. This is the man who never begs for attention because it comes to him naturally. This is the man who never forces love because he understands that real love is never forced. And when a man becomes this unshakable, he cannot be manipulated. He cannot be controlled. He cannot be played because he has mastered the greatest strength of all, detachment. Not the kind of detachment that makes him cold, not the kind of detachment that makes him numb, but the kind of detachment that frees him from needing anything outside of himself. That is real power. Because when a man reaches this level, people respect him. People admire him. People feel the need to prove themselves to him, not because he demands it, but because they can feel he is unlike anyone else. And in a world where most people are desperate to be chosen, a man who chooses himself, he stands alone, he stands strong, and he stands unshaken. The man who walks alone. There is a rare kind of man who does not fear being alone. He does not crave distractions. He does not seek validation. He does not need the noise of the world to feel complete, because he understands something that most never will. Solitude is not loneliness. It is power. The average man drowns in silence. He fills every empty space with attention, entertainment, or meaningless conversation. He cannot sit still with his own thoughts because they expose the truth he has not built himself yet. But the man who walks alone, he embraces the silence, because in that silence he finds clarity. In that clarity he finds purpose. And in that purpose he finds strength. This is the man who does not fear losing people, because he does not measure his worth by who stays or who leaves. This is the man who does not tolerate disrespect, because he would rather walk alone than be surrounded by people who do not value him. This is the man who is immune to manipulation, because he does not rely on anyone to give him a sense of self. That kind of man, he is dangerous, because he cannot be controlled. He cannot be guilt-tripped. He cannot be pulled back into a life that no longer serves him. Most people will never understand this. They will call him distant. They will say he has changed. They will wonder why he no longer plays the same games, entertains the same conversations, or reacts the way he used to. But what they fail to realize is he has evolved. He has mastered the ability to be alone without feeling empty. He has built a foundation so strong that no person, no rejection, no loss can shake him. And because of that, he is free. Free from the need to be liked, free from the need to be accepted, free from the illusions that keep most people trapped in a cycle of seeking external validation. The man who walks alone is not bitter. He is not broken. He is not lost. He is focused. He walks alone because he knows not everyone is meant to walk with him. He walks alone because he understands his path is not for the weak. He walks alone because he realizes the journey to greatness is never crowded. And when a man reaches this level of independence, people start watching. People start wondering. People start wanting to be a part of his world. Not because he needs them, but because his presence carries something rare, something powerful, something unshakable. And that is the moment he truly wins. Not because he has followers, not because he has admiration, not because he has attention, but because he has something far greater, total control over his own destiny. The shift in power, there comes a moment when everything changes. When the man who once chased stops running. When the man who once cared too much lets go. When the man who once sought approval walks away with no regret. This moment is not loud. It does not come with a dramatic ending. It does not require an announcement. It is silent, but its impact unmistakable. Because the second he decides to stop giving energy to the people who drained him, the power shifts, and she feels it. The calls that used to be answered immediately, now ignored. The texts that once sparked excitement, now met with indifference. The presence that used to revolve around her, now withdrawn. At first, she does not believe it. She tells herself it's just a phase, that he'll come back, that he still cares. But deep down, she knows something is different. Because a man who has truly lost interest does not pretend. He does not play games. He does not create unnecessary drama. He simply moves on. And that is the hardest thing to accept, because she was used to a version of him that would always try, a version of him that would always be available, a version of him that placed her on a pedestal. But that version no longer exists. Now he sees clearly. He sees the wasted effort. He sees the unreciprocated energy. He sees that the person he once valued was not who he thought she was. And once a man reaches this level of awareness, there is no going back, because he no longer seeks validation from someone who took him for granted. He no longer finds excitement in chasing someone who was never truly invested. He no longer places his worth in the hands of someone who was careless with it. That kind of realization, it is permanent. And she feels it in ways she never expected. She starts questioning herself. She starts doubting her choices. She starts realizing that the attention she once had is gone. That is the irony of it all. People often don't appreciate what they have until they feel its absence. They do not value presence until it becomes a memory. They do not take emotions seriously until they no longer exist. But by then, it's too late. Because when a man truly loses interest, he does not leave the door open. He does not wait for explanations. He does not look back with regret. He moves forward, not because he is trying to prove a point, not because he wants a reaction, not because he hopes to make her miss him, but because he finally understands his worth. And when a man reaches that level of self-respect, there is no force on earth that can bring him back to what he outgrew, the aftermath of indifference. Nothing stings more than being replaced by silence. Not words, not anger, not even hate, because hate still carries emotion. Hate still means hate means you still hold space in someone's mind. But indifference is the loudest goodbye. It is when a man no longer reacts, no longer cares to explain, no longer waits for things to change. It is when he chooses himself. And that choice, it changes everything. Because for so long she felt certain that he would always be there, certain that no matter what, he would always find his way back, certain that his patience was endless. But now, that certainty is gone, and in its place, doubt. Doubt that she made the right choices. Doubt that she fully understood what she had. Doubt that she will ever find that kind of presence again. At first, she convinces herself it's nothing, that she'll hear from him soon, that this is just another test of patience. But days turn into weeks. Weeks turn into months, and the silence remains. That is when the weight of his absence truly settles in, because now there is no one checking in, no one making an effort, no one giving attention without asking for anything in return. She starts noticing the emptiness. The messages she used to ignore, they stop coming. The calls she once found annoying no longer ring. The presence she once took for granted vanished. And in that emptiness, she starts to feel the consequences of indifference. Because when a man walks away with peace in his heart, he is gone forever. He does not leave room for second chances. He does not wait for closure. He does not hold on to what no longer serves him. And the hardest part, she realizes she never thought this day would come. She assumed she had more time. She assumed his patience had no limits. She assumed he would always try. But nothing lasts forever. Not love, not attention, not effort. Especially when it is not appreciated. And when a man finally stops caring, he does not return to the person who made him feel invisible. Because he knows something now that he didn't before. He knows that love is not a game of who can care less. He knows that true value is not proven through endless waiting. He knows that a man who respects himself does not beg to be chosen. And when he realizes that, there is no going back. Not for her, not for him, not for what they once were, because a man who has outgrown chasing will never again lower himself to be ignored. He will not explain his absence. He will not justify his silence. He will not give her the closure she now desperately seeks, because the real closure, she already received it when he stopped trying. And that realization, that is what stays with her long after he is gone. There's a moment when reality hits, not softly, not gradually, but all at once, like a wave crashing against the shore, relentless and undeniable. She looks around and sees everything is the same, yet something feels profoundly different, because he is no longer there. Not physically, not emotionally, not energetically. And that absence, it is deafening. At first, she brushes it off. He's just busy. He'll come around. He always does. But deep inside, something feels different. It's the certainty that's missing. She used to feel confident that no matter how distant she became, he would always reach for her. She used to believe his love was unshakable, unbreakable, unconditional. But now, she's unsure. For the first time, she is the one left waiting, the one left overthinking, the one left wondering if she was enough. And that is a feeling she never expected to experience. She scrolls through old conversations, reads his messages in a way she never did before, wonders how she missed the warning signs in his words, because they were always there. The subtle shifts, the quiet disappointments, the unanswered needs that he never voiced because he knew she wouldn't listen. And suddenly, the memories that once felt so ordinary, they hit different. The times he asked if she still cared, the nights he stayed up just to talk while she replied half-heartedly, the days he tried to make her smile only to be met with indifference. She sees it all now. But it's too late, because a man who once loved deeply but had to teach himself to stop will never return the same. She feels the weight of that loss in ways she never expected. And the irony? It's not that she never cared, it's that she thought she had more time. More time to change, more time to appreciate him, more time before he finally reached his breaking point. But love does not come with infinite chances. There is always a final moment, a final disappointment, a final realization that no amount of waiting will change what has already been lost. And that realization, that's the moment she finally understands. Understands what it feels like to be on the other side. Understands the regret of not giving enough. Understands that when a man truly walks away, he does not leave breadcrumbs behind. No messages left on read. No attempts to spark a reaction. No last words meant to make her chase. Just silence. And that silence, it is louder than any words ever could be. Because when a man truly lets go, he does not look back. And now, she is the one left hoping for another chance, one that will never come. The pain of realization regret is a slow poison. It doesn't strike all at once. It seeps in, quietly, relentlessly. At first, she tells herself it's nothing, just a phase, just a moment. But moments stretch into hours. Hours turn into days. And days become long, sleepless nights where thoughts race and silence screams. She replays everything in her mind over and over. The way he used to light up when she walked into the room. The way his voice carried warmth when he spoke her name. The way he gave his time so freely, as if there was nothing in the world he'd rather do. She wonders if she was blind or just careless. Because now all of it is gone. The energy, the devotion, the presence, vanished. Not with anger, not with blame, but with the quiet certainty of a man who finally chose himself. And that is what hurts the most. Because it would have been easier if he left with rage, if he called her out, if he made her the villain. But he didn't. He just stopped. Stopped trying, stopped caring, stopped fighting for something that was never his to win alone. And now she feels something she never thought she would. Powerless. Because the very thing she took for granted has now become the thing she craves the most. His attention, his effort, his love. But love is not a switch to be flipped when it's convenient. It's not a game where you get to reset the moment you start losing. It's a fire Neglect it and it dies. Smother it and it suffocates. Take it for granted and one day you'll reach for it only to find nothing but ashes. And now she understands that no amount of "I miss you" will bring back the man who has learned to live without her. Understands that his silence is not an invitation to fix things, but proof that they are already broken. Understands that love, once lost, does not always return, especially not in the same way. She tells herself she'll move on, that she'll forget, that she'll find someone else. But deep down, she knows the truth. She didn't just lose a man, she lost the man. The one who saw her when she wasn't looking, the one who stayed when she gave him every reason to leave, the one who loved her beyond words, beyond limits, beyond reason. And that loss, it is one she will feel for a long, long time. Because when a man who once gave his all walks away with nothing left to give, he never returns. And now she is left with the one thing she never expected to feel: emptiness. Because the space he once filled with warmth, laughter, and unwavering devotion, it is now a void she cannot escape. And no matter how much she tries to distract herself, to convince herself it doesn't matter, she knows. She lost something rare, something real, something irreplaceable. And that knowledge, that is a pain deeper than any words could ever describe. The weight of silence can be deafening, not the absence of noise, but the absence of presence. The absence of someone who once filled the room, the heart, the life with so much energy that their absence now feels heavier than their presence ever did. She never thought silence could weigh this much. It follows her in the quiet moments between conversations, in the empty spaces where his laughter used to live, in the pauses where his name almost escapes her lips before she swallows it back down, choking on what once was. Because the hardest part about losing someone isn't their departure, it's everything they leave behind. The unanswered messages, the unspoken words, the unfulfilled promises. She once thought she had time to appreciate him more, time to understand him better, time to make things right. But time is a deceiver. It tricks you into believing you have forever until forever is gone. Now she looks back and realizes his silence wasn't sudden. It was gradual. It was a language she never bothered to learn. The late replies, the forced smiles, the distant look in his eyes, as if he was already learning how to live without her before she even knew he was leaving. And when he finally did, it wasn't an explosion, it wasn't a storm, it wasn't destruction, it was an empty seat at the table, a missing name in her notifications, a familiar song that no longer feels the same. She underestimated the power of neglect, not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that makes someone feel unseen, unheard, unimportant. She thought love was about grand gestures, about apologies, about fixing things when they break. But real love doesn't ask for apologies, it asks for effort. Effort when things are good, effort when things are bad, effort when it feels like there's nothing to fight for, but you fight anyway because they are worth it. He fought. He stayed when she didn't notice. He gave when she didn't ask. He loved when she didn't deserve it. And when he left, she finally understood, because now she is the one checking her phone, waiting for a message that won't come. She is the one scrolling through old conversations, looking for signs she should have seen. She is the one replaying memories, realizing they are no longer hers to keep. And the irony? The moment she's ready to fight for him is the moment he's already won his battle without her. Because there is a difference between waiting and wasting. He was waiting, she was wasting. And now she waits, not for him to return, because he won't. Not for him to forgive, because he already did. Not for closure, because sometimes silence is the only closure you get. She waits for the day when the weight of his absence no longer crushes her, when his name no longer feels like a wound, when the echoes of his voice in her mind fade into whispers instead of screams. But until then, she will carry the weight of silence. And in that silence, she will finally hear the one thing she spent so long ignoring: herself. The lesson in letting go. Some lessons don't come wrapped in kindness. Some arrive as pain, wrapped in silence, delivered with absence. And the hardest one of all, learning to let go of someone who no longer reaches for you. She held on for too long, not to him, but to the idea of him. The version that once loved her, the moments that once mattered, the warmth that once felt like home. But people are not frozen in time. They evolve, they change, they outgrow. And sometimes they outgrow you. At first, she fought against it. She tried to pull him back into a space he had already left. She clung to his name like an unanswered prayer, hoping that if she whispered it enough, he would return. But the truth is, you cannot hold on to someone who is already gone. Not physically, not emotionally, not spiritually. Letting go is not weakness. It is not surrender. It is not giving up. Letting go is understanding that love is not possession, that real love is not about keeping someone. It is about wanting what is best for them, even if that means setting them free. She thought she needed closure. She thought she needed an explanation, a final conversation, a last goodbye wrapped in perfect words. But sometimes closure doesn't come in words. Sometimes closure is accepting that the only answer you will ever get is the silence itself. And silence, as painful as it is, speaks louder than 1,000 apologies ever could. So she let go, not all at once, but piece by piece. She let go of checking her phone, hoping to see his name. She let go of rewriting conversations in her mind, searching for the mistake that made him leave. She let go of waiting for the day he would realize what he lost, because the truth was, he had already found something else, peace without her. And now it was her turn. Not to find another love, not to fill the emptiness with distractions, not to pretend that she was fine when she wasn't, but to find herself. Because somewhere along the way, she had lost her own name in the echoes of his. She had built her identity around someone who no longer saw her. She had forgotten that before him she existed, and after him she would too. Letting go is a process. It is waking up every day and choosing yourself, even when the weight of missing them feels unbearable. It is reminding yourself that their absence does not mean your unworthiness. It is understanding that the end of love is not the end of you. And one day, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not next week, but one day, she will wake up and realize she is no longer waiting. She is no longer hurting. She is no longer looking for him in places where he will never be. She will breathe without the heaviness. She will smile without the sadness hiding behind it. She will stand in front of a mirror and recognize herself again, and that will be the moment she knows letting go was not losing. It was winning herself back.